Well, let's get more now. We can speak to Michael Oren, who is a historian, a former Israeli ambassador to the United States, and a former member of the Knesset. He joins us from Tel Aviv. Ambassador Oren, thank you very much indeed for taking the time to speak to us. First of all, I just want to start by asking you, because on Saturday you gave an interview in which you said that your gut feeling was that the United States would become involved in the Israel-Iran war, which it did within a matter of hours of you making that comment, and we'll come back to that in just a moment. But do you think that brief US involvement with the bombing of the Iranian nuclear sites is really what drew a line under that 12-day war?
First of all, good to be with you, and thank you for complimenting my gut. It's good to know that sometimes it's accurate. It was a decisive move. Israel, over the course of many weeks, could have achieved the same thing with successive bombing raids against Fordo, Isfahan, and the Natanz facility, perhaps even with ground forces, with special forces. But there's also a tremendous symbolic weight to the president's decision. It sent an unequivocal message of America's commitment to Israel's security, America's commitment to the security of the Gulf. It sent a very powerful message to America's adversaries in the world. I would imagine that there were people in Beijing today who are saying, well, maybe we have to think twice before we attack Taiwan. Russia also took a step backward after President Trump gave the order to bomb Fordo. So in many ways, that action not only changed the balance of power in our region, it had global ramifications geopolitically.
Why were you so sure that President Trump was going to do what he did right then and not use those full 2 weeks that he said he might use to think about it? And then at the end of it, he could have simply got cold feet and said, we're going to do nothing.
I don't have a terrific answer because, in fact, if you look at the cold facts, they would seem to strongly militate against a decision by the president to act. The polls taken that week showed that close to 90% of the American public was against American military involvement against Iran. And you know about there were divisions within the White House, between the divisions within the MAGA movement, and isolationist part of that movement was very much against military involvement by the United States in Iran. And so the president really went against the odds, went against public opinion in a very major way. But at the end of the day, I think the president saw an opportunity. He likes winners. Israel was emphatically winning. He saw an opportunity to put an end to the war through American intervention. And look, it succeeded. Right now, we've got a ceasefire. The big question is what happens next and what's going to be America's position if and when the Iranian regime comes back to the negotiating table.
Okay, well, let's talk about that a little further and bring into the fact that you've got this track record we've established for making accurate predictions. Are you confident that this ceasefire deal that was announced in the early hours of this morning, are you confident it's going to hold?
It depends on how you define hold. I'm sure that Iran will try to cheat, just like Hezbollah tries to cheat almost every day. And the Israeli military has to respond to those attempts and remind Hezbollah that we're watching very carefully. Now, Iran will try to cheat in various ways, and Israel will want to respond. The question is how much leeway will be given by the United States. We saw what happened today when we tried to respond to an Iranian missile attack on our southern city of Beersheba that killed 5 people. When Israeli jets took to the air, Donald Trump said, basically called them off. And used some very harsh language in discussing Israeli decision-making. So we don't know. We don't know what our leeway is going to be, and we don't know what the red lines are. For example, the Iranian regime this morning declared victory and said they're going to start rebuilding the nuclear sites that had been damaged and start replenishing their missile arsenal. Will that constitute, in the eyes of the United States, a violation of the ceasefire? Is it a ceasefire in place? And such a notion exists in international law, in situ. But will that be the case? If not, will Iran be able to rebuild its military capabilities under the shield of a ceasefire? And that would be very difficult. It's a very similar situation that we face in Gaza with Hamas, that Hamas will use a ceasefire to rearm and reorganize, and Israel will have to pay a big price for that in the past. It's one of the arguments used against those people who are against a ceasefire. And so that is yet to be seen. If, and this is a big if the situation is navigated successfully by the United States, what has transpired over the last 12 days can really be a transformative moment for the entire Middle East. The independence of Lebanon will be guaranteed. The independence of Syria will be guaranteed. A solution to Gaza can be found on the basis of demilitarizing the Gaza Strip and releasing all of Israel's hostages. Who knows, maybe in the future, under a different government, Iran will make peace with Israel. We will have a profoundly different Middle East. Or we could go back to a situation which is not all that different than what existed before October 7th, 2023, where Iran's nuclear capabilities will be capped, will be limited but not eliminated, and Iran will get sanctions relief and will use that money to reestablish its terrorist proxies and reclaim Syria as a colony.
You mentioned a change of government in Iran as being a possible outcome later on down the line. I mean, how vulnerable would you say the leadership in Iran is looking right now, and how likely do you think it is that there will be a change of leadership?
Well, I don't think it's going to be very likely in the short term. I don't know the degree to which opposition in Iran, and there is opposition in Iran, whether it's organized, whether in the current situation where many hundreds of thousands of people have fled from cities, certainly from Tehran, where there's no internet, whether such organization is possible. It is possible that a serious opposition can be mounted within the leadership as well, by elements within the IRGC, within the army, certainly. The army doesn't like the IRGC. It's a very weak army, however. We don't know. What is true, and I think that this would be hard to gainsay this, is that the weakness of the regime has been fully exposed. It has lost its proxies in Hamas and Hezbollah. It doesn't have the ring of fire anymore. It has been proven to be not just a paper tiger, but kind of a tissue tiger. And Israel has also struck down some of the tools of oppression in Iran. It has bombed the entrance to the Evin prison, where political prisoners have been held and tortured. I know some of them personally. And it has bombed the headquarters of the Basij, which is the paramilitary group that is used to suppress opposition very, very brutally. So I think that maybe people in the street, I don't know if they love the state of Israel and love what America and Israel have done in terms of bombing Iran, but it doesn't mean that they love the regime either, and may not take steps to remove what has been now for decades a deeply corrupt, inefficient, wasteful regime that has spent countless billions of dollars building terrorist organizations, building nuclear facilities, and not spending that money on the people of Iran, on schools, hospitals, and infrastructure.
Just going back to the conflict, the 12-day conflict, I mean, what do you think would have happened had the US not got involved when they did? I mean, suffice to say, I mean, how much longer would it have dragged on for had President Trump not decided to take action on Saturday?
I think it would have dragged on for weeks. And then we were already into what I would call a war of attrition, not just between two militaries, but between two societies. And which one would surrender first? Now, we were causing significant damage to Iran, breakdown of electricity, breakdown of finances, banks, again, hundreds of thousands of people leaving their homes. But within Israel, we had no school. The economy was paralyzed. There was no travel. There were upwards of 150,000 Israelis who were stranded overseas. One of them being my son was stranded overseas. And that was also exacting a price, as were the daily rocket attacks, the missile attacks. And I'll tell you now, as someone I have children and grandchildren, going into these bomb shelters 1, 2, 3 times a day and night, and the building would shake with these explosions. It was extremely, extremely distressing. So it was a question of how long our society could hold out, how long their society could hold out, which would be the first to raise a white flag and say, okay, we're ready to go back to the negotiating table. And what the American intervention did was to break the cycle of the attrition and come in and really make basically a sea change in the struggle. Now, I have cautioned on Israeli media, I do a lot of Israeli commentary, is that there's no such thing as a free lunch. That when the president makes that decision, he's going to come and make demands of the state of Israel. And
what sorts of demands? What sorts of demands, Ambassador, do you think he will be?
Well, one was that we, for example, when Iran fires a ballistic missile at Beersheba and kills 5 people, we're not going to go back and stage a major bombing reprisal against Iran. In the end, we took out a small radar installation, but it could have been much bigger. But I think down the line, the president, I think here's a gut feeling. You want to hear a gut feeling? I think the president will revive his deal of the century, his two-state solution deal, which didn't succeed back when he tabled back in 2019. And full disclosure, I was one of the advisors on that program, and I've been predicting for a long time that it would come back. We haven't seen the last of it. And unfortunately, the Palestinians didn't discuss it. I think maybe this time they'll think a little bit differently about it. And that's going to put some serious challenges to the Israeli government, certainly the current Israeli government, which is quite right-wing, as you know. So we shall see. It is not the last we have heard or seen of Donald Trump, not just militarily, but diplomatically.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, so on the one hand, we're giving credit to Mr. Trump for being a catalyst for bringing about a swift conclusion to the 12-day war. But on the other hand, I mean, I'm sort of getting the sense, not just from talking to you, but from talking to other people in Israel as well, that perhaps there was appetite for more fight, for more to be done, for more to, more striking while the iron was hot, so to speak. Do you think there is an element in Israel that feels like there was still a lot of work to be done, and this is a job not entirely finished?
Well, I think the prime minister came out and said that the IDF had achieved almost all of its military objectives. It's the way he could maybe signal that he doesn't want to continue. But I think the big proof is what happens next. And I'm reiterating what I said earlier, is that if Iran now moves to rebuild its capabilities, if it violates the ceasefire, what will be the response of Israel? What would be the response that the United States will allow Israel to have? And will ultimately the United States act as well?
We heard from the US president, and we didn't broadcast those exact comments, but he did make some pretty strong comments earlier on today as he boarded the plane for Europe for the NATO summit, using some strong language. It sounds like he's losing patience. Sounds like he's taking all of this very personally, and it has been a personal risk to him because he went against quite a lot of elements in his own party by deciding to get involved. Do you think patience is somehow running out with Prime Minister Netanyahu as well?
And maybe his patience is running out with the Middle East in general. He seems to but I don't want to quote him, but to sort of paraphrase him, he said that these two countries have been fighting for a long time and they don't know what they're doing, and he used an expletive in the middle of it, probably the first time ever publicly by a president. Israelis going to listen to that and say, that's not fair. We didn't attack Iran in 1979. They attacked us. They wanted to wipe us off the map. We didn't want to wipe them off the map. We're just defending ourselves. And we're not enthusiastic about the moral equivalency of it all. At the end of the day, we're just trying to live here. We're not trying to destroy them. It's not symmetrical. It is very asymmetrical. And if Iran can have any regime it wants, it can be a theocracy, it can be an autocracy, it can be a monarchy, it can be a democracy, as long as they're just not trying to harm us or trying to get proxies to harm us. And I don't know. That understanding is very rad. I do a lot of American television as well, and all the time you hear, Iran and Israel have been fighting for decades. No, we haven't been fighting for decades. Iran has been trying to destroy us for decades. We've been defending ourselves for decades. It's very different, and it's a substantive difference. And in that difference lies the key to what can happen next. Because if Iran stops threatening Israel and other neighbors, and if Iran stops being the world's largest state sponsor of terror in the world, complicit in the murder of hundreds of thousands of people in the Middle East, just 500,000 Syrians, thousands of Americans starting in Beirut in 1983 and through the Iraq War, responsible for attempts to assassinate American leaders. They tried to assassinate me when I was in Washington. This is a very evil regime. If that can end, the Middle East can enjoy, I think, an unprecedented era of peace.
Just pivoting to Gaza, I did say we were going to bring it up as the conversation went on. We've got 2 million people suffering in famine-like conditions there in Gaza. The opposition leader Yair Lapid saying, this has got to come to an end. Using your powers of prediction, how much longer can this go on for?
Not very much longer. Not very much longer. And it's very divisive in Israeli society right now. It's certainly causing major damage to our international relations. But the question is how it ends. And I think the majority of Israelis would agree to a prolonged ceasefire in exchange for releasing the hostages. Now, I'm not naive. I don't think that Hamas is going to release all the hostages. They read the Israeli press, they read our WhatsApps, and we always say, let us release the hostages, and then we'll go back and we'll eliminate them. They'll always keep a couple of hostages for safekeeping. But we can get most of the hostages out, certainly the living hostages out, for prolonged ceasefire. The big issue for this Israeli government, I stress this Israeli government, is whether at the end of the ceasefire, Israel will retain the right to renew the fighting. Because what's at stake here is whether Hamas will emerge from the tunnels and once again take control of the Gaza Strip. It will rearm and it will stage another October 7th, because that's what its leadership say they're going to do. They actually hide it. They said they're going to do it 10,000 times. If that's the case, that not only will Israelis not go back to living in the areas around the border, I don't know if you have children, but you wouldn't put them there either. They're actually firing rockets again this week. It barely made the news. But it will send a very powerful message of Israeli weakness and Hamas strength around the Middle East. Around the Middle East. It will, not just the Middle East. Hamas is a wing of the Muslim Brotherhood. And the Muslim Brotherhood, according to a secret report that was leaked from the French government, the Muslim Brotherhood has established a state within France. Hamas wins in Gaza. You're going to see repercussions for that in the streets of Paris. And so the issues here are very serious. And so as a person who, I don't represent the government, I very much want to see that ceasefire. I very much want to see our hostages released. It's crucial for me personally, morally, every way. But I think we have to have an answer about what is the future of Gaza. Will it be demilitarized? Will the leadership of Hamas be exiled to another country? These are crucial questions. Then how do we rebuild the Gaza Strip? Is it an international force, inter-Arab force from the Gulf? Certainly. And how do we re-educate Palestinian young people that in a way that for peace and not for bloodshed and not for terror?
Yeah, but I mean, in the immediate term, I mean, there are horrific scenes playing out. We're all seeing them. You've mentioned that they've tested relationships between Israel and its allies. I mean, just today, 21 people killed as they waited for food. They were killed by tank and bullet fire. I mean, what people do not understand in the rest of the world is why are starving people being shot at while they're waiting for food? And this is what Israel's allies are asking.
Unfortunately, it's a tragically simple answer, and the answer is Hamas. Hamas is embedded with all these people. Hamas is trying to disrupt the distribution of food. Hamas will shoot at these people, shoot at Palestinians. They will kidnap people who are trying to distribute food.
But Hamas doesn't have tanks.
They're under hospitals, they're under schools, and they're under mosques. So, if they're firing at Israel from behind the civilian population, we're going to do our best not to kill civilians, but they're going to be in there. And so Hamas bears responsibility. Let the world say the following: Hamas, surrender. Put down your guns, give out the hostages, go wherever you want to go. Israel will not follow you. You get away scot-free. And the war will end. It'll end literally in a minute. Okay? But to ask Israel all of a sudden to stop and let Hamas come out and rearm and recapture the Gaza Strip, I don't think that's a viable request for anybody to the state of Israel. I was on a European television station the other day. They asked me, okay, why don't you just stop? Why don't you just, stop, give out food, stop? I said, okay, but what's your answer for when Hamas wins and once again turns the Gaza Strip into a terrorist state that's going to prohibit hundreds of thousands of Israelis from going back to their homes? And then it's not just a tactical threat, it becomes a strategic threat. And Israel is in a very complex environment. None of this is simple. None of it is simple. It is politically, morally, very complex.
Just lastly, Ambassador, and to end this conversation on a more upbeat note, you're also quoted as saying that President Trump could go down in history as, quote, the greatest peacemaker of the 21st century. Now, you've already given me a few hints as we've gone along, but just sum up for us what that assessment is based on.
Well, I think that Lebanon has been given a glimpse of freedom that is not enjoyed in decades. Same thing true with Syria. And even in Hamas, even in Gaza, there's hope for the future that didn't exist 2 years ago. Because all of these areas were controlled to various degrees by Iran. They're all under Iran's thumb or its foot whatever you want to, part of the body you want to put it, that they were under it. So they've been given an opportunity for freedom. And I think that many of the people in these areas will use that freedom to try to make peace. They're not going to all of a sudden turn around and make war. And I think peace between Israel and Lebanon would be extraordinary. It should be transformative for the entire Middle East, our two societies sort of pooling our resources and our talents. And with Syria, I mean, Syria has done nothing but threaten its neighbors since the 1940s. This would be a big, big difference for the entire Middle East. Peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia is not just peace between Israel and Saudi Arabia, it's peace between Israel and the Sunni world, or most of the Sunni world. So if Donald Trump can engineer all this, he'll get not one Nobel Prize, he'll get a whole row of Nobel Prizes, and he could be the greatest peacemaker in the 21st century. It really hangs on the balance right now. And I as an historian, I can't remember a moment like this, really, not even after the Six-Day War.
Okay, well, we're going to leave it there. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Michael Oren, former Israeli ambassador to the United States. Thank you for your time, sir. That's all we've got time for on Global News today. Thank you very much indeed for watching. Be sure to join us again tomorrow for more exclusive interviews. Until then, bye-bye.